Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Smith. I am a visual computing researcher and also an academic program director with Intel Corporation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the transition I went through personally as part of the program. As Lisa said, when we started this program, we were asked, well, you've all done some form of invention. What was your challenge? What was your struggle? And for me, the thing that stood out was this notion of all the institutions that I work with that had created obstacles that in their institutional form really restricted innovation. Either they were incremental in their processing, traditional career paths, or in general just limited ambition. And I guess in a way I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I'd worked at this organization just down the street for a number of years, AT&T Bell Laboratories, as a corporate research fellowship recipient. And for me, I had been in an environment that was very exciting, didn't have the traditional norms associated with research. In a lot of ways, I guess it was a lot like this place. And I can say that after a wonderful tour by our wonderful hosts throughout the day. And it's also amazing that just down the street, I'm standing in the world's quietest room when some of the audio technology of the foundation behind that was invented at this very site. So for me, this notion of working in a Bell Laboratories and going into other environments with stifling research was very foreign to me. So that was my notion about what was the limiting factor for innovation. But really, after going through this program and giving lots of talks and meeting my fellow invention ambassadors, I said that, really the challenges around innovation start with the things that you acquire and the notion of your impact. So we all start with this idea of knowledge and education. And, when you're in college, when you're in graduate school, you think that's the hardest thing you've ever done. Until you actually get out into the real world and you're doing research. You're like, oh, wow, this is really hard. Now, then try to publish something or start a business or do some type of technology transfer. So you see where I'm going with this. Things get progressively more difficult in this invention cycle. So in my invention cycle, the knowledge piece was through entrepreneurship and academia. So I worked as, in graduate school as a professor. I started some businesses, and that part of knowledge growth really extended me into my profession. The research part was really just fun. I was an image processing researcher. I did things like facial analysis, virtual reality, and this notion of how do you understand video and how do you process video. And then my next, and probably my biggest contribution to the area of video understanding was how do you take all of this technology and extract meaning from video? And one of the best examples I came up with was this notion of how do you create a movie trailer, an automated movie trailer, or a video summary? How can you take video and identify the most important parts of the video? And this was the first video summary I did for a movie. Let's see. So what you just saw there was a system that analyzed video and did a compaction of about a 10-to-1 of the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie, completely automated. And it's doing that, creating almost a movie trailer-like effect, but it's creating a shorter video viewing experience in a completely automated manner. And if you would have noticed in the video, you're picking up things like motion transition, interesting speech, interesting dialogue, and a variety of different things. And when I developed this system, there were no less than 14 image processing systems 5 speech analysis systems, and 3 language processing systems incorporated to create that type of summary. And when I did this, I said, wow, this is going to revolutionize the movie industry. We don't need to hire people to make movie trailers anymore. I can plug this into my system. I can create a summary like this in less than 5 minutes for a 2-hour movie. So I started a business. I approached many different companies, many different movie studios, and then that's when really things started to take off. So if you had to guess, 20, 30, how many movie studios do you think got into this and bought into this technology? You guessed it, not one, not a single one. And really that was sort of a learning point for me, because as much as I was excited about the technology, as much as it seemed to work, there was a reality about the movie industry, which is that in the age of $100, $200 million budget movies, the notion of spending a little bit of money to make a movie trailer and get it exactly right really isn't a big deal. I mean, movie studios spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on movie posters, and I found that out the hard way. So it was a big shift in me, because I had gone through this process of becoming an imaging scientist, developing something I thought was really important, and then realizing that there's something had to change here in my model. Something had to change in order to get this out and be successful. And one of my colleagues approached me and he said, well, have you ever heard the expression, there's no business like show business? I said, sure. I said, you ever wonder why when they show a movie, the credits just go on and on? It's like people will do anything to work in the movie business. And we don't really need automated systems in the movie business. We can pay an intern a few $100s and they'll do this just as well. And I said, you know what, I'm a little caught up in that myself. Maybe the movie side of this isn't the best angle. So I pursued this a little differently, and as I started to analyze it, after year 1, I went back to the systems and I said, well, what are we really looking at here? We're looking at about 24 different technologies. Maybe that's not the right catch. And as I started to approach this, I said, really, this is more appropriate for military, government applications, and even video editing applications. And from that point, I started to approach a whole new spectrum, the Sonys, the Panasonics of the world, and some of the military and industry and government. And from that, I was happy to say there was a pretty significant turnaround in year 2. We started to get some licensing and some contracts. But I must tell you, the ego in me was still a little damaged. You've got 24 systems, and of those 24, 5, just under 25% of the system, just over 25% of the systems being licensed. But that was part of my learning process, was that even though I had created something that I felt was very important and I thought was nice and cool, it really didn't meet the needs of industry and some of the areas that needed to grow. And from that, I learned to be happy and pleased with that level of success, because after all, the business did grow and things did move from that point. So the lesson I learned from that was, just because something may not work the first time, it may just be that you're not looking in the right area. And for me, things worked out dramatically differently because of that. So thank you, and thank you, Yolanda, Neela, and my fellow ambassadors, and I'll turn it over to you.